Hi, I'm Chad with Move for Guitar. This lesson is from our series, Music Theory for Guitar. In this lesson, I'm going to explain triads and show you how to build major triads. First off, download our free e-guide, Music Theory for Guitar. It contains everything that I'm talking about in this lesson, all the charts and diagrams, as well as much more, so it'll be really useful to you. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to just go download that. But I am working on it right now as I'm filming this lesson, so it may not be available as you're watching this lesson. And if it's not available yet, it'll say coming soon. And if you'd like to get notified when it is available, you can sign up for our mailing list, and we'll send you a notification for when it is available and let you download it. And also, if you're signed up for our mailing list, you'll receive all updated versions as well. But don't worry, you don't need the e-guide to follow along with this lesson because all the charts and diagrams will be on the screen. And also, we add at least one new lesson every day, so be sure to subscribe. This is part 2.1 from our series, Music Theory for Guitar. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So in this new section, we're going to dive into chords. We're going to talk about chord construction, chord scales, chord progressions, and much more. And this is the point where theory starts really becoming useful in a practical way. And up to this point, you've learned about intervals and scales, specifically the major scale. You've learned about more than that, but those are two of the biggest topics that we've covered. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about chords. Chords consist of at least 3 notes played at the same time, or what's called harmonically. Harmony just means more than one note being played or sung at a time, so that's why it's called harmonically. And if you're watching these lessons, I'm sure you've played plenty of chords. I'm sure you know a lot of open chords at least. But in these lessons, we're going to dive into where those chords are actually coming from, how you build them, and much more. So for quite a few lessons to start off, we're going to be talking about 3-note chords, which are your most basic chords, and they're called triads. And the 3 most important triads to understand are the major triad, the minor triad, the diminished triad, and the augmented triad. These are the foundation for most chords, and definitely the foundation for understanding chords and building chords and more advanced chords. And these triads all consist of a root, some sort of third, and some sort of fifth interval. So to build any of them, you would start on the first note, which would be your root, then you'd go up to a third, some sort of third, and then you'd go up to a fifth, some sort of fifth. And in this lesson, we're going to focus on how to build a major triad. So the diagram on the screen shows a 1-octave chromatic scale. It's in A, but we're not worried about what the notes are. We're only looking at the intervals for this lesson. And I've labeled the intervals by the most important names for building these triads that we're talking about. But as you'll remember from previous lessons, a lot of these intervals have multiple names, just depending on the musical situation. So to build a major triad, you would start on the root, go up to the major third, and go up to the perfect fifth. So major triad are the intervals root, major third, perfect fifth, or just 1, 3, 5. And this is also known as stacking thirds. Building these triads that we're talking about is also known as stacking thirds. You start with one note, which is your root, and you go up a third, some sort of third, and you go up another third from the last one. So from this root to build this major triad, we go up a third, which is a major third, and then from this note, the major third, we're going up another third, and for building the major triad, that's a minor third this time. So for building a major triad, you're stacking a major third and then a minor third. Those are the distances between each of these notes. But you don't necessarily have to worry too much about that right now. Just focus on the fact that a major triad is a root, major third, perfect fifth. And so this diagram is showing the root, the third, and the fifth on one string, but to play this as a chord, you can't do that if they're all on the same string. So we need to move the third and the fifth off of the same string as the root. So first we can just move the third to its unison note, which you'll remember this is a unison distance. So this third right here is the exact same note as this one. It's just now we've moved it to the adjacent string. And also hopefully you can recognize that this shape, when I talked about interval shapes in a previous lesson, that's a major third shape from this root to that third. And then we need to move the fifth off of the same string as the root. So we can first, you can look at it as moving it to its unison, but if it's on this first unison note on adjacent strings, then it's on the same string as the third. So we need to move it again to another unison note. So all three of these fives, all three of these perfect fifths are unison notes to each other. So we've just basically taken this one and moved it all the way down to this unison note so that we could get all three of those notes on different strings. And we're just looking at the closest strings that they can be in, closest position they can be in, which are all adjacent strings. So here's what a major triad looks like played on the 6th, the 5th, and the 4th string. And we'll talk about playing these on other string sets in other lessons, but for right now you just need to look at it the way I'm showing it from the 6th, the 5th, and the 4th string. So again, hopefully you can see that this is a major third interval shape that we talked about in a previous lesson. This shape right here, from here to here, we never talked about in that lesson because we talked about a perfect fifth being right here and having this shape for a perfect fifth. But all we've done is take that note and moved it over to here to its unison note. So this right here is a perfect fifth interval shape as well from this root to that 5. And if you played any chords, if you know your open chords, you've definitely played major triads before. For example, this is an A major triad. So is this right here technically, because this note is starting on an A, this root note. So this is an A major triad, but so is this. And I'm sure this is probably a chord you know or at least have seen before. And this is an A major triad even though it has more than 3 notes that are ringing out, because the 3 notes are just a root, a third, and a fifth. You have a root, and then the next one in order is a fifth, then a root, then a third, then another fifth. So all you have going with this chord are a root, a third, and a fifth. So that is a major triad chord. Or same thing if you look at this chord. This is a G major chord, I'm sure you know. All you have is a root, a third, a fifth, another root, another fifth, and another root. So this is a G major chord, but it's also a G major triad. It just has more notes ringing out, and that's just called doubling up notes. So all you have are root, third, and fifth being doubled up. And technically you have 3 roots going on in this chord shape. And then one more, a C major chord, another chord that's very common. You I'm sure know this chord. This is just a triad chord with notes doubled up. You have a root, a third, a fifth, another root, and another third. And if you'll notice, this shape, if we left out all the other notes, looks exactly like the shape that we built from the 6th string, where you go root, third, fifth on adjacent strings. So if we go back here, that is the same shape that we created here. But we'll talk about that more in upcoming lessons. So that's an introduction to triads and how to build major triads. We're going to dive deeper into this through the lessons, and I'll explain how to actually use all this information. Right now we're just laying the foundation, and you can go ahead and move on to the next lesson where I'm going to show you how to build minor triads. And be sure to download the e-guide to use as a reference. All this information is in it. And be sure to subscribe because we had at least one new lesson every day.